My name is Elena Carter, and I am 30 years old. For most of my life, I believed I had it all: a stable job as a financial consultant, a loving fiancé named Daniel, and a circle of friends who always seemed supportive. But at the center of that circle was one person who shined brighter than the rest, or so I thought: my best friend, Sophie Miller. Sophie and I met in college. She was charismatic, the kind of girl who could walk into a room and have every head turn. I was quieter, more focused, the type who kept meticulous notes and spent weekends planning for the future. Opposites attract, people say, and in our case, it seemed true. She pushed me to loosen up. I grounded her when she spiraled. Together, we became inseparable, sisters in everything but blood. At least, that's what I thought. What I didn't realize was that Sophie was watching me closely, not because she admired me, but because she was calculating. Where I saw her as family, she saw me as a blueprint. It started small. She borrowed my clothes, my makeup, even my phrases. At first, it felt flattering. I'd laugh when she mimicked me, and she'd joke, "Well, you're basically my role model, Lena." I brushed it off as a best friend's admiration. But slowly, the lines blurred. My wardrobe, my taste in wine, the way I did my hair, she mirrored it all. Daniel teased that sometimes he couldn't tell our voices apart over the phone. I laughed, but something inside me twisted. Still, I ignored it. After all, Sophie was my best friend. The first red flag came at my company's annual gala. It was a black tie event, and I had been excited to introduce Sophie to my colleagues and Daniel's business partners. But when she walked in, I froze. She wore an identical dress to mine. Same cut, same color, even styled her hair in the same elegant bun. Guests chuckled about us being twins, but Sophie didn't stop there. She slipped into conversations where people congratulated me for a project I had led and responded with, "Thank you, it was such hard work," as if the praise was hers. I thought maybe it was a misunderstanding until I overheard her introducing herself to someone new as Elena. I confronted her later, but she brushed it off with that disarming smile. "Oh, don't be dramatic. It was just a joke. Lighten up." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to cling to the friend who had been with me through late-night study sessions, heartbreaks, and celebrations. So I let it go. But that was only the beginning. Weeks later, strange things started happening. A credit card charge for a luxury spa day appeared under my name, one I never booked. An expensive handbag was delivered to my apartment, though I hadn't ordered it. I thought it was a billing mistake, maybe fraud, so I contacted my bank. They assured me the purchases had been made using my account credentials. I felt a chill. Then Daniel mentioned something odd. He had seen Sophie around town, driving a car that looked eerily like mine. When he waved, she pretended not to notice. That night, I sat down and went through my accounts meticulously. There were withdrawals I hadn't made, subscriptions I hadn't signed up for, reservations under my name. Someone was living pieces of my life without my consent. And deep down, I knew exactly who it was. I wanted to confront Sophie, but part of me hesitated. What if I was wrong? What if I destroyed our friendship over a misunderstanding? She was clever, always quick with excuses. Without solid proof, she'd laugh it off again and make me feel paranoid. The turning point came when I received a phone call from a boutique hotel. The receptionist warmly thanked me for another wonderful stay and asked if I wanted to book the penthouse suite again for next month. My heart dropped. I had never been there. I asked the receptionist to confirm the guest's details. The email used for the reservation was my own. The identification on file, a driver's license with my name and birthday. But when she described a photo, it wasn't me. It was Sophie. My best friend had stolen my identity. The reality hit me like a physical blow. She wasn't just copying my style or borrowing my phrases. She was becoming me. She was using my credit, my accounts, my reputation to live a life of luxury while I was left footing the bills and cleaning up the mess. As I sat there, shaking with rage, the betrayal cut deeper than any blade. How long had she been planning this? Had our entire friendship been a setup for her to crawl inside my skin and take everything I had built? I realized then that Sophie wasn't my friend. She was a predator, and she had chosen me as her prey. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't going to stay silent. I wasn't going to let her win. If she wanted a game, I'd play, but I would play smarter, harder, and darker than she ever expected. This was no longer about friendship. This was war. The days after I discovered Sophie's betrayal were a blur of disbelief and rage. Everywhere I turned, I saw her fingerprints on my life. She was slipping into my identity like a snake into borrowed skin, shedding her own flaws and failures to bask in the glow of what I had built. At first, I thought I could contain the damage. I froze my credit cards, changed my email passwords, set up fraud alerts. But Sophie was always a step ahead. Somehow, she still managed to reroute bank notifications and intercept mail. She wasn't just pretending to be me, she was erasing me bit by bit. I began to feel like a ghost haunting the edges of my own existence. The most gut-wrenching moment came when Daniel grew distant. He started missing dinners, making excuses for late nights at work. I brushed it off as stress, but then I saw it, an Instagram photo. Sophie, in a red silk dress, sitting across from Daniel at a rooftop bar. His hand rested just a little too close to hers. The caption, "Celebrating life with someone special. Lucky. #lucky." My blood ran cold. I confronted Daniel that night, my voice shaking. He swore it was innocent, that Sophie had invited herself, and he didn't want to be rude. But the way he avoided my eyes told me everything. Sophie wasn't just stealing my money or my name, she was stealing him too. And that was when the rage inside me solidified into resolve. I wasn't going to let Sophie win. To fight her, I needed proof, undeniable, unshakable proof. So I became an actress in my own life, pretending not to notice while secretly documenting everything. I tracked her movements through receipts, traced her calls through subtle tech tricks, even followed her once, my heart pounding, as I watched her strut into an exclusive members-only club using my name. The sight of her laughing with strangers, glass of champagne in hand, made my stomach churn. She looked radiant, almost more me than I was. People adored her, envied her, and none of them knew they were clapping for a counterfeit. The deeper I dug, the more horrifying it became. She had leased a luxury apartment under my name. She was driving a brand new Mercedes, also registered under my identity. When she swiped a card, it was my credit. When she signed a form, it was my signature. I realized with a jolt that if I didn't act soon, I wouldn't just lose money, I'd lose myself. The law wasn't simple. Identity theft cases could drag on for months, years even. Sophie knew that. She counted on me being too scared, too ashamed, or too slow to stop her. But Sophie underestimated one thing. I knew her better than anyone. I knew her tells, her weaknesses, her vanity, and I could use them all. The first step was to lure her into overconfidence, so I played dumb. When she flaunted her new jewelry, I smiled weakly and said, "Wow, that's gorgeous. I wish I could afford something like that." She laughed, thinking she had me fooled. Meanwhile, I recorded every interaction. My phone became my weapon. Screenshots, call logs, photos of her entering places under my name. I created a hidden folder labeled Project Phoenix because that's what I intended to do. Burn her carefully constructed fantasy to ash and rise from it stronger. But collecting evidence wasn't enough. I needed to understand why. So I dug into her past. Sophie had always been secretive about her family, her debts, her failed relationships. I hired a private investigator with the last of my savings, and what he uncovered painted a chilling picture. Sophie was drowning in credit card debt. She had been evicted twice. Her last job ended after accusations of embezzlement. She was desperate, cornered, and I was her golden ticket out. But here was the twist. Sophie wasn't just using my life as a lifeline. She was obsessed with becoming me. The PI discovered she had doctored photos, editing herself into group shots with my colleagues. She had even applied for a mortgage as Elena Carter. It wasn't survival anymore. It was transformation. The final straw came one rainy evening when I returned home to find my apartment door ajar. Panic shot through me. I stepped inside cautiously, and there she was, Sophie, sitting on my couch, sipping wine from my glass, wearing my favorite cashmere sweater. She looked at me with a smug little smile. "Oh, Lena, you weren't supposed to be home so early." I froze, bile rising in my throat. "What the hell are you doing here?" She tilted her head, her eyes glinting with something dark. "Just making myself comfortable. Don't you ever get tired of this life? Always working, always stressing. You don't appreciate what you have, but I do. I can live it better than you ever could." Her words sliced through me like knives. That was the moment I knew she wasn't just a thief, she was delusional. She truly believed she deserved my life more than I did. But I also knew something else. She had slipped. By breaking into my apartment, she had crossed a legal line that even she couldn't charm her way out of. I kept my voice steady. "You're right, Sophie. Maybe you do deserve it. But let's see if the police agree." Her smile faltered for the first time. I didn't call them that night, not yet, because I had a bigger plan in mind. But I wanted her to know that the game was changing. I wasn't the prey anymore. I was the hunter. I couldn't sleep that night after finding Sophie in my apartment. Her perfume still lingered in the air, cloying and suffocating. I sat in the dark, staring at the door she had so casually left ajar, and realized something vital. Sophie wasn't afraid of me anymore. She believed she had already won. Good, let her think that. Because now it was my turn to play. The first move was Daniel. For weeks, I had avoided confronting him about the rooftop bar incident, terrified of hearing the truth. But I needed to know where his loyalty lay. One evening, I sat him down at the kitchen table. "Daniel, we need to talk about Sophie." He stiffened instantly, his jaw tightened, eyes darting away. "Elena, don't start. She's your friend. You're imagining things." My chest tightened with betrayal. He wasn't even defending me. He was defending her. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "She's not just borrowing dresses, Daniel. She's pretending to be me. She's stolen money, accounts, even signed contracts in my name. And I think you know more than you're admitting." His silence was deafening. And then it clicked. The late nights, the rooftop bar, the way he flinched whenever I mentioned her. Sophie hadn't just seduced my identity, she had seduced my fiancé. I wanted to scream, to throw the engagement ring back in his face, but I swallowed the rage. Not yet. Instead, I smiled bitterly and said, "Thank you. You've just given me exactly what I needed." Daniel blinked, confused. He didn't realize he'd already betrayed himself. If Sophie wanted my life, she could have it, temporarily. Because the trap I was about to set required her to feel invincible. I reached out to her a week later, acting timid, broken. "Sophie, can we talk? I don't want us to fight. I feel like I'm losing everything, and maybe you're the only one who understands." She bit instantly, her voice syrupy with false sympathy. "Of course, Lena. I never wanted this to come between us. Let's meet. I'll make it up to you." We met at a cafe downtown. She swept in wearing designer heels, bought with my stolen money, and hugged me as if nothing had happened. People glanced at us, admiring her confidence, oblivious to the venom behind her smile. Over lattes, she cooed, "You're stressed, Lena. You should let me help you. I could handle some of your work, manage things for you. You deserve a break." Her words were a dagger wrapped in silk. She wanted me to hand her the last pieces of my life willingly. So I played along. Maybe you're right. I'm so tired. Maybe you could take over for a while, just until I feel stable again. Her eyes gleamed. She had no idea that every word was being recorded on the tiny device hidden in my bag. The next step was riskier, staging a setup. I invited Sophie and Daniel to a private dinner at my apartment, our old tradition of Wine Wednesdays. I told them I wanted to clear the air. The moment they arrived, I watched their body language. Daniel avoided my gaze. Sophie looked smug, as though she had already claimed him. We clinked glasses, and I steered the conversation carefully. So, Sophie, tell me, how does it feel living in that gorgeous new apartment, driving that new car? Her eyes sparkled. Oh, Lena, it feels amazing. I finally feel like I'm living the life I was meant for. Click. The hidden camera in the corner captured every word. I pushed further. And the bank account? Must be nice having all that extra credit. She laughed, tipsy from the wine. Well, it's not exactly mine, is it? But you never knew how to use it properly. I'm just taking what you don't appreciate. My hands trembled under the table, but I forced myself to stay calm. Every arrogant confession was a nail in her coffin. And then came the final blow. I leaned back, staring directly at Daniel. Tell me, Sophie, do you think stealing my fiancé is part of the life you were meant for too? The room went silent. Daniel's face drained of color. Sophie's smirk faltered. What are you talking about? She stammered. I pulled out my phone, sliding it across the table. On the screen was a photo, captured by the PI, of Sophie and Daniel in his car, kissing passionately. My voice was ice. You didn't just steal my name, Sophie. You stole the one person who was supposed to protect me. But tonight, you've stolen something else. Your last chance at freedom. Before either of them could speak, there was a knock at the door. 2 detectives entered, badges flashing. It turned out Sophie wasn't just guilty of stealing my identity. With the evidence I'd gathered, the recordings, the documents, the footage, she was facing a mountain of fraud charges. The detectives handcuffed her right there in my dining room, her face twisted in disbelief. But the real twist was Daniel. The officers revealed something I hadn't known. Sophie had been using his accounts too. She'd forged his signature on several transactions, implicating him in her schemes. He wasn't just a cheating fiancé, he was a potential accomplice. His jaw dropped. Sophie, what did you do? But Sophie only glared at me, her voice venomous as the detectives led her away. This isn't over, Lena. You think you've won? You'll see. I'll come back, and when I do, you'll wish you were me. Her words sent a chill through me, but I forced myself to stand tall. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't the ghost of my own life anymore. I was Elena Carter again, and Sophie was nothing but a fraud. The night Sophie was taken away, I thought I would finally breathe again. For months, I had lived in her shadow, doubting my sanity, watching my own reflection betray me. Seeing her in handcuffs should have felt like victory. But instead, the silence afterward was crushing. Daniel sat across from me, head in his hands. The engagement ring on my finger suddenly felt like a chain. Elena, I swear I didn't know how deep this went. I thought... You thought what? I cut him off, my voice cold. That you could kiss her behind my back and I'd never find out? That betraying me with my best friend was just a mistake? His shoulders sagged. He looked broken, guilty. But I didn't care anymore. Daniel, we're done. The words felt like a knife, but they were necessary. I slipped the ring from my finger and dropped it on the table. The metallic clink echoed louder than Sophie's handcuffs had. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. The following weeks were chaos. Detectives interviewed me repeatedly, piecing together Sophie's fraud. Banks froze accounts, investigators combed through transactions, and her name appeared in headlines. Socialite arrested for identity theft scheme. Every article had her photo next to mine. Two faces so alike that readers couldn't resist the sensationalism. The thief who stole her friend's life. And while Sophie's name drowned in scandal, mine was dragged along with it. Clients pulled back, invitations stopped. Even walking into a grocery store meant whispers behind my back. I had gotten my identity back, yet it was tainted. One evening, as I sorted through the wreckage of my finances, I received a letter. No return address. The handwriting made my blood run cold. Enjoying my leftovers, Lena. Don't get too comfortable. You may have set the trap, but I planted the minefield. Tick, tock. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. It was Sophie. I called the prison immediately, demanding answers. She was being held pending trial. No visitors allowed except her lawyer. How could she have sent this? Unless she had help. It didn't take long for the cracks to appear. Creditors began calling me about debts I hadn't taken. Emails arrived confirming luxury purchases in my name. Someone was still using my identity, even while Sophie was behind bars. I went to the police, furious. You have her locked up, and yet she's still stealing from me. But the detective frowned. Miss Carter, these charges aren't from Sophie's usual accounts. They're linked to your fiancé. My stomach dropped. Daniel. I stormed to his apartment, where he had been staying since I ended things. Papers littered his desk, statements, contracts, all with my forged signature. He looked up, panicked. Elena, it's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like? I shouted. You're still working with her, aren't you? He ran a hand through his hair. She threatened me, Elena, from jail. She said if I didn't move the money, she'd tell the world I helped her. She'll drag me down either way. His voice cracked, desperate. I love you. I was stupid. I made mistakes, but I'm trying to fix it. But I saw the truth in his eyes. Daniel wasn't just a victim. He had enjoyed the luxury Sophie gave him, the thrill of forbidden loyalty. And now he was caught in her web, still tangled even as she sat behind bars. That night, I realized something terrifying. Sophie didn't need freedom to destroy me. She had already planted enough seeds, accounts, debts, forged contracts, that even from a prison cell, she could make my life crumble. And Daniel was her puppet. The woman I had once trusted with my secrets had weaponized every piece of me. But I wasn't powerless. I met with the detectives again, this time with a new plan. You want evidence? I'll give you everything. Emails, letters, recordings. Daniel isn't just her accomplice, he's her lifeline. Cut him off and she has nothing. They agreed, setting up surveillance. I baited Daniel, pretending to forgive him, letting him think I wanted to start over. He relaxed, careless again, and soon enough the police had their proof. Recorded calls between him and Sophie's lawyer, arranging transfers, laundering money through shell accounts. The night they arrested him, I stood on the sidewalk as he was shoved into the back of a squad car. His eyes searched mine, full of betrayal. But I felt nothing. Daniel was just collateral damage. The real war was still with Sophie. Weeks passed. Sophie's trial loomed, and prosecutors were confident. With Daniel implicated, her defense was crumbling. And yet, I couldn't shake her words. Tick, tock. On the morning of the trial, as I walked toward the courthouse, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One new voicemail. I pressed play. Her voice filled my ear. Calm, confident. Hello, Lena. By the time you hear this, something will already be in motion. Did you really think you were smarter than me? I didn't steal your life to give it back. I stole it because I knew you wouldn't survive without me. Watch carefully, darling. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. The line went dead, and for the first time since she was arrested, I felt true fear. Because Sophie wasn't finished. She was just getting started. The courthouse buzzed with tension. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, and every step I took toward the witness stand felt like walking into Sophie's trap. Inside, Sophie sat at the defense table, wearing the standard prison uniform, but her smirk was unchanged. Even in chains, she radiated power. Her eyes met mine, and a shiver ran through me. It wasn't fear of her freedom. It was fear of what she had already set in motion. The trial was brutal. Prosecutors laid out her crimes: forged documents, stolen funds, identity theft. Daniel's betrayal was exposed in detail, his recorded calls played for everyone to hear. I should have felt vindicated, but every time Sophie's lawyer rose, I braced myself. He didn't just defend her, he attacked me. Ladies and gentlemen, Elena Carter willingly allowed Sophie access to her accounts. She benefited from their shared lifestyle. Perhaps she even encouraged it. It was absurd, but his words spread doubt. Whispers filled the courtroom. Was I truly an innocent victim, or had I been complicit? That was Sophie's strategy. If she was going down, she would drag me with her. During recess, I found another letter slipped into my purse. My blood turned cold as I read. Don't fight me, Lena. Plead guilty to negligence and I'll stop the bleeding. Otherwise, I burn everything. My hands trembled. She was still controlling the narrative, even from the defense bench. I wanted to scream, to tear the paper apart, but instead, I smiled. For the first time in months, I realized something.
Sophie thrived on my fear. If I stopped feeding it to her, she'd lose her power. When I returned to the stand, I spoke clearly, steadily. I told the jury everything, how Sophie had stolen not just my identity, but my sense of self. How she manipulated Daniel, how she planted debts, how she tried to make me doubt my own reality. I didn't hide my flaws. I admitted I had ignored red flags, trusted too easily, even let myself be blinded by love. But I ended with this. The difference between me and Sophie is simple. I made mistakes. She made choices. The courtroom went silent. For the first time, I saw Sophie's smirk falter. The verdict came after 2 agonizing days. Guilty. Identity theft, fraud, conspiracy. Daniel, too, was sentenced. Less time, but enough to shatter whatever future he imagined. I should have felt triumphant, but Sophie wasn't finished. 2 weeks after the trial, I came home to find my apartment door ajar. My heart raced as I stepped inside. Everything was untouched, except my desk. On it sat a single USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop, breath caught in my throat. A folder appeared, labeled The Real Elena. Inside were hundreds of files, bank statements, private messages, old photos, but woven among them were fabricated records, altered documents suggesting I had colluded with Sophie, hidden money overseas, even framed her to cover my tracks. And at the center, a video file. I clicked play. It was Sophie, speaking directly to the camera. Her hair was down, her smile calm, recorded long before her arrest. If you're seeing this, then I've lost. But don't celebrate yet, Lena. I've built a story where you're not the victim. You're the mastermind. These files are already duplicated, hidden in places you'll never find. If I fall, you fall with me. My stomach twisted. Even in defeat, she had left a scorched earth plan. I spent sleepless nights debating my next move. Should I run, destroy the files, confess everything, even the lies, just to rob her of the weapon? But then a thought struck me. Sophie's strength wasn't her lies. It was the illusion that people would believe them. So I decided to flip the script. At a press conference, I stood before the cameras that once haunted me. I held up the USB drive. This was left in my apartment by Sophie Reynolds. Inside are forgeries, an attempt to frame me, even after her conviction. I'm sharing it publicly because I refuse to live in shadows anymore. I released the files online, letting experts dissect them. Analysts quickly confirmed they were manipulated. The narrative shifted. Sophie wasn't just a fraud. She was obsessed, vindictive, willing to destroy anyone in her path. And me? I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a survivor who had faced her and chosen transparency over silence. Months passed. Slowly, my reputation began to rebuild. Clients returned, friends reached out. I even started therapy, determined to untangle the scars Sophie had left. But some nights, I still wake to echoes of her voice. Tick, tock. I'll never forget what she did to me. And maybe that's the true ending. Sophie stole my identity, but in the process, she forced me to build a stronger one she could never touch. Because the woman who walked into that trap was naive, trusting, blind. The woman who walked out, she'll never be fooled again.